Today I'm going to talk to you about GitHub Copilot and how it integrates well for database projects. Uh, GitHub Copilot was released and it integrates well with several tools like Visual Studio, Visual Studio Code, uh, and Azure Data Studio, and several other tools are being added to that list. So today I'm going to talk to you about uh, uh, GitHub Copilot installed on Visual Studio 2022 and how it integrates well for the database projects. If you go under extensions and manage extensions, you should be able to install GitHub Copilot and configure it. In my case, as you can see, I have it installed and I have enabled it. And once I create a new project, in this particular case, I'm going to create a new um, database project, SQL Server database project. That's what I'm going to select here. Click on next. For my project, I'm going to call it my DB Copilot demo. Create. So this is a DB project I'm creating, and once the project gets created, uh, you will see certain messages in the output window. So that GitHub Copilot got enabled when the project got created, and it's live and running. So as and when you create artifacts in your project, GitHub Copilot understands all those things and try to give you suggestions as you move on. And would like in this particular case, I'm going to create a new table here. Uh, let's call it then customer. So the table got created, and people familiar with the database project would be familiar with this particular interface. I'm going to swap it to a code interface here. In this particular table, I want to call this as an identity column, call it ID, make it that. And the next column, want it so GitHub Copilot, let me zoom in here, it gives you a suggestion as I'm typing to the next line. It says maybe you want, and as you can see, it's appearing in gray. To accept that particular uh, suggestion, all you have to do is hit tab, and that will get enabled. So in this particular case, I do not like its suggestion of having customer key in integer. Instead, what I'm going to say is I'm going to start typing what I want, which is going to be a BK customer things. It is suggesting just a customer, but I want to say BK customer ID. And it's suggesting that to be an integer. I do not like that either. I want it to be a varchar. So it's suggesting a varchar 15 and not null. Uh, I would like to accept that, but instead I want to call that, let me say, a varchar 50 and not null because it's a business key and I don't want that to be a nullable field in my data in my table. And the next one is it's asking whether I want a customer alternate key. Now I don't like that suggestion. Instead, I want to have attributes like first name, last name, and stuff. So it is suggesting a first name field, which is fine and which is exactly what I want. But I do not like the data type to be a varchar 50. Instead, I want it to be a varchar 200. So I'm going to accept it by accepting tab, but I'm going to change it to a varchar 200 instead. Now I would like to have last name as my next column. So I'm going to hit enter here. Sure enough, if you notice, zoom in, it suggests his last name. And if you can see, if you look closely, it also understood that my first name was Watchout 200. So uh, it assumes that I might want to have a Watchout 200 field for my last name too, which is exactly what I wanted in this particular case. So going to zoom out. I'm going to hit tab to accept that. And I do want it to be a not nullable. And the next one, it's suggesting I want to have a birth date. No, I'm not interested in birth date. Instead, I want to have an email address. So when I said EMA, it automatically thinks that I'm going to add an email address. And it says watch our 200 character. Good. I will accept that by hitting tab. And the next one, uh, I would, for this demo purposes, I don't want to add more fields. So I will stop with these two fields. I won't take any of the suggestion, but instead I want to add a constraint. Since we have a BK customer ID in this particular table, I want to add a constraint to this table to make sure that that is unique. So I want to uh, start typing in constraint. Quick, if you let me zoom in here, as you can see, it understands that with the few keywords that I gave, it assumes that I want to add a constraint. In this particular case, it is correct. And if you notice, it gives a good customer the constraint name, which is normally a standard in most of the places, which is UQ underscore the table name, which is dim customer in this case, underscore the field name, in this particular case, BK customer ID, and automatically understands that. I'm going to accept. I run this, and I'm going to accept it. Fair enough. I like the suggestions it made. As you can see how quick it was for me to define a dim customer table for this particular project. Now I'm going to show you on how it understands and adds into uh, it helps me in writing other objects in this particular database project. In this particular case, I'm going to create a store procedure called sp merge dim customer, which will be used for by applications to merge data into this particular table. So say enter. Visual Studio gives with the standard uh, parameter one and parameter two. I don't, in this particular case, I'm not be using that. Instead, I'm going to add fields that I have defined for the dim customer table and start making them as parameters for this particular show procedure. I would like to have with a convention as p underscore main parameter. So it automatically understands since I have defined the table, it knows that BK customer ID is one of the fields I have defined for my table. So it suggests that. And if you notice, it also um, knows the data type of that BK customer ID field and so suggested that as a watch out 50 as a parameter for my store procedure, which is correct in this case. I'm going to hit tab and accept it for my next parameter. It automatically understood that my first parameter was I've defined it with a naming convention of p underscore. So it suggested my second parameter to be a p underscore field name, which is in this case first name. And notice the data type was also correct based on the field defined for the dim customer table. So I'm going to accept that. And p last name, tab, accept it. And p email address, accept it. And now uh, I want to add another field, which is basically an output parameter, because in cases of well, since I'm merging into this table, and if it's a new customer, I wanted to insert that new customer and return the ID for that particular customer. So I'm going to hit and comma and hit enter, and it's suggesting that that I specify an operation type. In this particular case, I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to say P underscore, and I want a customer key. It does say customer key for the output parameter, which is exactly what I wanted, but instead I want to call it as a customer ID. So I'm going to say customer ID, and it knows that it has to be an output parameter that I'm trying to define. It's all figuring out the behind the scenes by making, if you see the output window here, it does make calls to the API service and tries to figure that out. So I'm going to accept that, and I'm going to format this particular store procedure. And now what I'm going to do is it has this dummy select statement in there. I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to give it a prompt. I've noticed that GitHub Copilot works very well when you give it a prompt of what you are planning on doing next. So it could suggest better uh, code when you are trying to do it. So in this particular case, I'm going to say a comment here, and I'm going to say merge customer data, and I hit enter, and it understands that I'm trying to merge. Let me zoom in, and you can see it's saying merge into dim customer because I'm set customer data. It understands the name of the table because it's in the project, but it also suggested that I alias it, which is a regular the way of doing it. But I don't like the way it register the alias as target. Instead, I would like to call my for naming conventions. I like to call my target as TGT. So I'm going to hit tab and accept it for now, and then change it to say TGT. And I'm going to say it, enter. And it does suggest using BK customer ID as my source. So um, in this particular case, it didn't quite pick up quite well of the rest of the things that I wanted to do. So I'm going to accept this as a source, but I also want other parameters. So add, so it's suggested. I'm going to remove that for a second. And see, when I hit enter here, you can notice that it automatically understood what I was trying to do. And with the parameters, it was suggesting much better code that might be best suitable for the way I want to code. So it perfectly matches what I want to do. And also, if you notice here, let me zoom in. um, the way I have defined my first parameter, which is add BK customer ID as BK customer ID, it suggested the rest of the code base as add P first name as first name. And also notice at the very end, since I alias my target as TGT, it alias the source as SRC. So pretty intuitive. So I'm going to accept that by hitting tab, hit enter, and it says that I might want to join on the BK customer ID uh, for the merge statement, which is correct. I'm going to accept that and hit enter, and And then when it matches, it said that, hey, you might want to update the first name, last name, and email address, which is right in this particular case. And when not matched, you might want to insert into that particular table, which is correct. So I'm going to hit enter and hit tab and accept it. And next, since I have defined an output parameter, it also understood that, hey, you might want to select the output parameter to be returned, which is correct. So hit tab and accept it. And but there is a squiggly here. Why is that? Because the field is called .id and not .customer ID. So it kind of missed that. So every once in a while, I do see that it kind of misses that. So this particular case, I'm going to change it and uh, accept it. So as you can see, it does a pretty good job, but every once in a while, it might not pick up on everything. So in this particular case, it missed the customer ID, but for the most part, it did give me a good starting point where I want to start my code base. So as you can see, this was very helpful. And let me show you another quick thing. Uh, we have a dim customer table. I want to add a dim customer address table where a customer can have multiple addresses. And I want to show you how it picks up on the objects that we have already defined and helps me in implementing those objects. So I'm going to hit and add a new table in here. Call it dim customer address. I'm going to swap it for the customer for the code in the beginning. So I'm going to define this as an identity. Accept it. And it says that, hey, since it kind of picked up saying that it's customer address table, maybe you want to have customer ID as a key into this field into this table. Sure enough, yes, and it has to be not null. Yes, because it belongs to a customer. I'll accept that. And the next one, and I hit enter, it's suggesting, hey, do you want address line 1, 2, city, state, country, region, postal zip code? And if you let me zoom in, you can see, and it also understood that I want maybe uh, uh, the customer ID column that we added has to be a foreign key to the dim customer table. So smart. So, and it references the ID column of that particular table. So it's great in, figuring out all these things. If there are any changes that you want to make, you can always accept this by hitting tab and also make any of the changes. Like say, for example, I want the address columns to be 300. So just pick and select 300 as your, and all my state and provinces, I want it to be only 100 character fields or something. So can always make those changes after accepting the basic code base it gives. And fair enough, that was so quick, right? So let me show you another nifty feature here. I want to add a store procedure here and say this is going to be store procedure delete customer. Okay, so it's a delete customer. Um, so the parameter for the store procedure I would expect is a customer ID, which we have, so that I can do the corresponding deletes. So it's going to be p underscore. It automatically thinks that it has to be a customer ID. So it suggests that, hey, do you want to add customer ID? Which is right in this particular case. I'm going to hit tab and accept it. And now here for the body of Mr. Prompt, since I have a customer ID as my parameter, remember I have two tables in here, which has a customer address and a customer. So if I try to delete right from a customer table, it's going to create a foreign key violation. It won't let me delete it because that customer could have customer addresses. So we want to implement cascading delete here. So I'm going to put a prompt here saying that implement cascading delete. Oh, it's saying you want to implement cascading delete. That's what I'm going to hit tab, accept it. And here, first enough, as you can see, and let me zoom in, it's suggesting that, hey, first, so you want to delete all the places where you have foreign key defined for this particular customer ID. So deleting customer address first. So that's good. I'm going to hit tab and accept it and hit enter. And now it says that, hey, you might want to delete the customer next. So yes, that is correct. I'm going to accept it. Good. So cool. And I'm going to format it the way I would like to. And as you can see here, it well works how helpful it was and how easy and helps in productivity of defining some of the objects that you want to do for the database projects and stuff like that. In subsequent videos, I will share some of the other features that it also does so that it can be helpful for you all.